imaging used in this video was supplied by ImageAir. Site inspections, offshore inspections, aerial photography, site mapping, and roof inspections. Friendly, affordable, and quality service from qualified drone pilots with industry-recognised certification. Head to imageair.co.uk for more information or check them out on Facebook.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Velocity Kinetics. Today we're going to be talking about something, it might seem quite innocuous, but actually it is unbelievably important to the world of automotives. It's something that surrounds all of us, so it's surrounding me now. No, don't make a fat joke, otherwise I might go and cry. I'm going to go cry. What I'm talking about is air. Talking of air, thank you to ImageAir for the background images that have been used with permission. If you're in the northeast of England, if you've got any aerial photography needs, roof inspections, offshore inspections, site surveys that need doing, ImageAir, drone photography, imageair.co.uk. Thank you. But ImageAir back to air. It's like I invented the segue for it. But air itself is fundamentally important to the car. If you think about it, and I've crudely and horribly found out this week when my tyre lost a lot of air, it keeps your car on the road, as in all the air in your tyres. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about a moped, a motorbike, a super mini, a family hatchback, a family saloon, estate, wagon, people carrier, supercar, hypercar, megacar, racing car, whatever you want to call them. It's fundamentally important in that aspect. You've got all the air involved in making a combustion cycle within your engine, whether that's petrol or diesel. Air into the cylinder, fuel, explosion, power, movement, repeat, pretty much. What's probably most important is how the air reacts with the car as an entity. So we're ignoring, for the time being at least, how the air you require for your tyres, your engine cycles and things like that. The air itself is important, and you don't think about it that much until someone starts saying, oh yeah, pollution's quite bad. You don't really think about it, or you're like, oh, it's a bit hot, the air's a bit close. You don't think about it that much. And as you go about your day-to-day life, you won't think two things of it. You'll breathe in, breathe out automatically. You might run through the air, you might go, oh, it's a bit windy, and that's probably about it. But for the car, when you do things, it is unbelievably important and unbelievably frightening in some ways. And what do I mean by frightening? Well, we're going to talk about downforce to begin with. Now, whilst I've got a whiteboard somewhere behind here, probably there, whilst I've got a whiteboard back there that I could do some sort of weird calculation that I've discovered on YouTube or doing some research, I can't really explain the maths, so I'm not going to do that. But in short, what's quite scary when it comes to downforce, it's just the opposite to generating upforce. Now, what do I mean by upforce? Well, if you think about it, when you're on an airplane, let's use this little photo album as a representation of a plane wing. So when you're taking off to generate lift, fast air flows over here, creates an area of low pressure, and in turn lift. What you then do with F1 cars and a lot of racing cars, it's the other way up. So fast air flows underneath there and it creates downforce. Now, quite scarily, if you fitted the piece the wrong way up on the racing car, you suddenly got a frightening amount of lift. But it's not just to do with the wings, because your diffusers act like it, your flick ups, your flaps, they're all creating what they call vortices, which is just little tiny bits of air that are spinning away. And in a lot of racing cars, particularly F1 at the moment, well, they're not so much this season because they've tried to cut it away, but for the last few years they've had a lot of what they call outwash. So whilst your F1 car might be yay wide, the shape it creates as it goes through the air is incredibly big. So actually that's why an F1 car can't just overtake very easily. It's very difficult to get close. If you remove some of the outwash and remove some of the spinning vortices, then the car would be closer. If you think about it, that turbulent air, it's creating an invisible wall that that the car behind has somehow got to break through. So never mind if you've got a car that can cut through the air perfectly. Even the low drag cars like the old, well now old, FW36 from when we first went into the turbo era in Formula 1, or the FW37. They were incredibly low downforce and really fast in a straight line. I believe Valtteri still holds the record for the fastest straight line speed recorded, which was at Baku in the FW36, like 236, 237 miles an hour, I think it was. Even with a car that slippery, it's still got a deal. It's still got to cut its own hole through the air and cut through the damage that someone's done behind it. If you think about it, it's like following someone through a thick brush where the trees and things, rather than someone leaving it open for you to go, thank you very much, I'll follow you through. You've got doing that, and then the trees sort of going whacking back in your face. It's like George's Jungle probably's got lots of stuff in it like that. If you're wanting sort of examples of trees smacking into people's faces, or various comedy jungle thrillers. The other complication that you get though when you're starting to do that sort of speed, I don't know if anyone else ever did this as a child. I know I certainly did it a lot, and probably would still do it if I wouldn't get into trouble for doing it whilst driving. Probably just stick your hand out the window and letting the air sort of flow over it. And it's sort of weird, if you sort of keep your hand like this or like that, you can cut through the air so finely, but depending on how big you make your hand starts being pushed around, even at like 40, 50 miles an hour. Your sort of hand's not really your own without a lot of resistance from yourself. The faster you go, the more dense air becomes. Never mind elevation levels, we'll get onto that in a minute. But the faster you go, the harder it is to move through the air. So you're walking around, or I'm just moving my hands through the air here. It's not difficult. Not that difficult at all. But if I did it much faster, well, it's still not really that difficult, really. But if you start moving your car through the air faster, whether you're just talking about a little Suzuki, or an Aston Martin.
Yeah, this is another supercharger.
I get so many speeding tickets in one of these.
There comes a point where the car just can't cut through the air anymore. I remember once from Top Gear when James May was driving the Bugatti Veyron. I can't remember if it was just the original Veyron or the SS. But he was explaining that the faster you go through the air, the harder and more dense it gets. So he said by the time you're doing over 240, 250, it's like trying to move through fruitcake. It's trying to drive through treacle. So you need an insane amount of horsepower to get it that fast. And if you're going on a top speed run, it's not just a case of more horsepower, less weight. Because you've got the resistance of the air, never mind crosswinds and things. If the air was still, you've still got the difficulty of getting the car through the air. Now, in racing car terms, you've got that difficulty, coupled to the outwash and inboard and inwash various effects you can create. You could go to an air of ground effect, which channels the air underneath the car and manages it really tightly. You've got the big Venturi tunnels going underneath the car. You have the long side skirts creating suction, basically creating a wall of air that stops the car from going off the track. Because some of the early ground effect cars were insanely quick in the corners, but had to be slowed down because of safety concerns. So you could probably do that and minimise some of this invisible because to the average person on the street, maybe a casual F1 fan, sort of when someone's like, yeah, I'll watch the race if it's on, but not really that bothered. It just looks like drivers can't be bothered to push. It's not a case of they're pushing. The moment you start getting into all that turbulent air, your aerodynamics don't work, your tyres don't work, and everything just becomes a mess. And then because you've gone through it, the car behind you's now got to go through that as well. And it's just a mess. If you move to more of a spec series like NASCAR, or where things are a lot more aerodynamically restricted, then you can create things where you can pass. It's kind of where the beauty of NASCAR kind of is. Because of the way they overtake, they then get into the... There is a point when you're behind a car, called the slipstream, where if you're following dead on in what the car in front has done, you're going through the same hole in the air before the air shuts behind them. So the simplest way I can put it, we'll use this again to explain it. My trusty photo album. What is in this photo album? I forgot about it. I had this printed. Anyway. So if you think about it, if car number 1 is going through the air, so this is like the solid air before the car's gone through, this is where the car's going through, you think about that as it's going. If you've got another car behind going before the air shuts, before the hole in the air shuts, then the other car can come through easily and just get round. It's kind of what the principle that NASCAR relies on, and Formula E to an extent, and IndyCar, whereas Formula 1 doesn't quite rely on that. Tries to achieve it, but just can't do it. This difficulty of managing the air creates a brilliant engineering challenge for the F1 car designers, or just racing car designers in general, or the designers of things like the Koenigsegg Jesko and the Bugatti Chiron, one that's just broken 300. That in itself, breaking 300 miles an hour, was quite a phenomenal achievement. Even though people are saying, yes, it was, well, it wasn't the production one, it was missing this, it was missing that, it was modified. And someone on the Velocity Kinetics page said, well, a Ford GT did that a long time ago. And it's like, this is the first one that's been built to do it on purpose, not modified. But anyway, the challenges of getting a car through, whether you modified it like that Ford GT, or whether it was purpose-built like the Jesko, or there is a Hennessy on the way. There is I can't remember the name of the company, I think it's a Phenom, I think it's what it's called, where it's got a quad turbo V16 engine, it's got producing like 4,000 or 5,000 horsepower to get over 300. It is just requiring such insane numbers for stuff like that to happen. And I don't know about you, but some of those numbers I just can't wrap my head around. On the road, this challenge of trying to get the car through the air is one that we never really bothered with for a long time. We sort of designed a car like, excellent, yeah, build the next one. That's why if you think about it, some of those boxy Volvo estates are brilliant vehicles, aerodynamically crap. And some of those bigger BMWs and things of a similar ilk, the 80s, 90s, they didn't give a toss really about aerodynamics. But now in the pursuit for miles per gallon, every shape, even down to the shape of your wing mirrors, affects how the car cuts through the air. If you think about it, the best example I can think of the change is if you think about a Volvo V70 from about 1997, and just give that a quick Google, it's really boxy along the front, and then the 2000 model, really curved on the front, not just for a stylistic change, but aerodynamically so, and it was one of the most aerodynamic estates on the market. It keeps evolving, this need keeps evolving, and then you're incurring a new engineering challenge, trying to get things like, I'm sorry, I just keep looking at it because I see one and I absolutely freaking hate them. There's a Range Rover Evoque across the street from the room I'm doing this in, and you've got the challenge trying to get something like that through the air, because the closer to the ground you are, the easier it is to move the car through the air. But then you start raising the car up, you then got all this air flowing underneath, you then got horrible air shape going over the top. It's just not the right way to do, well, wrong to say not the right way to do things, but maybe a lot more of an engineering challenge than you would think it would be. But this challenge of the air doesn't just apply to cars, because as mentioned in that first example, we're trying to get a plane through the air. The plane is designed like it is to cut the smallest hole through the air. Fighter jets are that same thing. That's why the SR-71 Blackbird, what a gorgeous, gorgeous plane. But it's shaped that way to minimise its impact through the air. Helicopters are bashing the laws of submission to laws of physics into submission when they're trying to go through the air. Even the little drone that ImageAir used to make these pictures for us, that was an engineering challenge in itself, to get them up and to get those up in the air for them to maintain the steady flight that they do. All the way the air can vary. The higher you go, the easier it is to cut through it. That's why planes can cut through it nice and easily, because they're high up, the air's thin, and they can cut through next to no air. That's why in Mexico, for Formula 1, they're running Monaco levels of wing, achieving Monza speeds. because the air's not there to create the drag and to bother the aerodynamic surfaces of the car. Trade-off is though, when there's less air, it's harder for the engine to cool itself. There's less air to work with the fuel in the combustion cycle. That's why you lose power. I noticed when I went to Scotland with Sarah a few years ago now, when I had a Suzuki Swift, the previous generation one with a naturally aspirated engine. When we were getting up high, my car's power was just gone. I kept having to change down. With the turbo, I could compensate for it, but I still had some power loss. You know, air effect. It's unbelievably weird. Air. If you think about it, air is everything to do with the car's life cycle. If the air is bad, good or bad because of how the previous cars were built and recycled, they're not done properly, and the air quality goes to crap. How the car moves through the air is how the designers and engineers work out what the best shape is and how to make it affordable and so on and so forth. Then you've got the air of everything that goes into making everything, and then back to that argument of the air of the quality where people are, where the thing's being built and things. Then you've got the air as in when the car's cutting through when it's running. Then the air involved in the power output. What the air's like after the car's been through it, both fuel emissions output and turbulence. And then what the air's like when the car is recycled. It's one of these things, for something so mind-numbingly mundane. It's unbelievable just how important it is to just to the car, never mind to the people. So we'll wrap it up there for today, I think. I'd like to thank you for watching. Remember to keep donating, or start donating. I should say start because no one has. Donate via paypal.me/Velocity Kinetics. Help us produce more content and be able to do things like more tests and so on and so forth. Thank you to ImageAir for the background imagery. We really appreciate it, and head over to their website as well. We'll try and get more content out as and when we can. Things are changing. I need to do more overtime. Russ has got his own thing to get done. So I can't necessarily put out the same amount of content as I want. Please go and watch our back-to-back video from the video called Back to Back. It's a car review between the Ford Fiesta and the Suzuki Baleno. I liked making that video, I liked editing it, but I'd like to see more views and things on it, just not as in for YouTube money, because we're not high enough up the list to get monetized, but more as in, I want more feedback. Was it good? Was it bad? Do you want to see more of that sort of content? Do you want less? Well, rather I don't do it at all. I am aware that some of the video in that was a bit pixelated, but that's because the focus wasn't working properly on the camera. But have a safe weekend, guys. Drive safe, and we'll see you when we see you.
The imaging used in this video was supplied by ImageAir. Site inspections, offshore inspections, aerial photography, site mapping, and roof inspections. Friendly, affordable, and quality service from qualified drone pilots with industry-recognised certification. Head to ImageAir.co.uk for more information or check them out on Facebook.